The morning sun filtered through the oak leaves above Riverside Community Garden, casting dancing shadows across the carefully tended plots. Benjamin Torres adjusted his position in his wheelchair, surveying the therapeutic garden he had designed 3 years ago. The space had become his sanctuary, a place where his hands could still create beauty, despite the accident that had changed everything. At T32, Benjamin possessed the kind of quiet strength that came from rebuilding a life from the ground up. The car accident had taken his ability to walk, but it had also revealed reserves of determination he never knew he possessed. As a landscape architect, he had found new ways to practice his craft, specializing in accessible garden designs that brought joy to people with disabilities. The community garden was his masterpiece. Raised beds at wheelchair height, wide pathways, adaptive tools, and a sensory section filled with fragrant herbs and textured plants. Every Saturday morning, he came here not just to tend his own plot, but to help other gardeners navigate challenges with their plants. Yet despite being surrounded by life and growth, Benjamin often felt profoundly alone. "Excuse me, are you Benjamin Torres?" He looked up from the tomato seedlings he was transplanting to see a woman standing beside his garden bed. She had shoulder-length auburn hair that caught the sunlight and warm brown eyes that seemed to hold both determination and uncertainty. A young boy stood slightly behind her, peeking around her legs with curious green eyes. "That's me," Benjamin replied, setting down his trowel and wiping his hands on his gardening apron. "Can I help you? I'm Emma Rivers, and this is my son Noah." She gestured to the boy, who stepped forward shyly. "The garden coordinator said you might be able to help us get started. We just moved to the neighborhood, and Noah has been asking about growing his own vegetables." Benjamin studied the pair. Emma wore simple jeans and a faded blue sweater that had seen better days. But she carried herself with the dignified exhaustion he recognized in single parents trying to do everything for their children. Noah, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with barely contained excitement. "What kind of vegetables are you interested in growing, Noah?" Benjamin asked, directing his attention to the boy. "Carrots," Noah burst out. "And maybe some beans that climb up things. Mom says we can't have a big garden at our apartment, but she found this place online and said maybe we could try." Emma smiled at her son's enthusiasm, and Benjamin felt something shift in his chest. There was something authentic about this woman. A lack of the uncomfortable pity or awkward overcompensation he often encountered when meeting new people. "Well, you've come to the right person," Benjamin said, maneuvering his chair closer to an empty plot nearby. "Carrots are perfect for beginners, and I happen to know where we can find some great climbing bean varieties." Over the next hour, Benjamin found himself thoroughly enjoying the company. Noah asked endless questions about soil, pH, companion planting, and whether earthworms really helped plants grow better. Emma listened intently, occasionally asking practical questions about maintenance and harvest times that showed she was already thinking about the long-term commitment gardening required. "You really know your stuff," Emma said as they finished outlining their plot with string and stakes. "Have you been gardening long?" "Since I was about Noah's age," Benjamin replied. "My grandmother taught me. She always said that gardens were where magic happened, where tiny seeds became food and flowers through patience and care." "Magic," Noah repeated thoughtfully. "Like how caterpillars turn into butterflies." "Exactly like that," Benjamin agreed. "Sometimes the most beautiful changes take time and the right conditions." As they worked, Benjamin learned that Emma taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school and had moved to the neighborhood after her divorce was finalized. She didn't volunteer much about her past, but Benjamin sensed that starting over was as important for her as it was for Noah. "Mr. Benjamin," Noah said as they finished for the morning, "will you teach me more about the magic garden stuff next week?" Benjamin glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd be happy to, if it's okay with your mom." "More than okay," Emma said softly. "Thank you for being so patient with us today. I haven't seen Noah this excited about anything in months." As they gathered their things to leave, Emma hesitated. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but how do you manage all this?" She gestured toward the elaborate garden setup. "It seems like it would be challenging." The question could have been offensive, but something in her tone told Benjamin it came from genuine curiosity rather than pity. "It requires some creativity and different tools," he admitted. "But gardens are about adapting to conditions, right? Plants figure out how to grow in rocky soil or partial shade. I just had to figure out how to grow in different circumstances." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That's a beautiful way to look at it." After they left, Benjamin remained in the garden, but the solitude felt different now. For the first time in months, he found himself looking forward to the following Saturday. There was something about Emma Rivers that intrigued him beyond her son's enthusiasm for gardening. She had looked at him directly when they spoke, asked practical questions without tiptoeing around his disability, and treated him like a person first, rather than a condition to be managed. That evening, as he transferred from his wheelchair to his couch in his adapted apartment, Benjamin realized he was smiling. Noah's wonder at the prospect of growing his own food had reminded him of his own childhood excitement in his grandmother's garden. And Emma's quiet strength had stirred something in him that had been dormant since the accident. For 3 years, he had focused on rebuilding his professional life and creating spaces that served his community, but he had carefully avoided the messier territory of personal relationships, convincing himself that independence was more important than connection. The brief interaction with Emma and Noah had planted a seed of possibility he hadn't expected. Outside his window, the city hummed with evening activity, but Benjamin felt the peaceful satisfaction that came from a day spent in the soil. Tomorrow, he would research the best varieties of climbing beans for beginners, and maybe look into child-friendly garden tools. He told himself it was purely professional interest in helping new gardeners succeed. But as he drifted off to sleep that night, his thoughts kept returning to Emma's genuine smile, and the way Noah's eyes had lit up when discussing earthworms. Perhaps, like the seeds they had planted that morning, something new was beginning to grow in the carefully tended garden of his heart. The garden had taught him that the most beautiful things often grew from the most unexpected places. Maybe it was time to see what might bloom between the raised beds and meandering pathways he had created, not just for accessibility, but for connection. 3 weeks into their Saturday morning garden routine, Benjamin found himself arriving earlier each week, not just to prepare for Noah's endless stream of questions, but to spend more time with Emma. What had begun as gardening instruction had evolved into something more complex and meaningful. Noah had proven to be an exceptional student, absorbing information about soil composition and plant biology with the intensity of a much older child. But it was during their second visit that Benjamin discovered the boy's particular fascination with adaptive gardening tools. "How does that work?" Noah had asked, pointing to the ergonomic hand tool Benjamin was using to cultivate around their bean poles. "It's designed for people who have trouble gripping regular tools," Benjamin explained. "The handle distributes pressure differently, so it doesn't strain your hands as much, like how my mom uses those special scissors at school for cutting construction paper." Noah asked thoughtfully. "Exactly like that," Benjamin said, impressed by the connection. "Different tools for different needs." Emma had been listening from where she knelt beside their carrot patch, but Benjamin noticed the way her expression shifted to something more personal. Later, as Noah played in the children's section of the garden, she approached him with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "Noah has some fine motor skill challenges," she said quietly. "Nothing dramatic. Just makes things like writing and detailed hand work more difficult. His occupational therapist has been working with him, but I never thought about adaptive gardening tools." The revelation explained Noah's immediate interest in Benjamin's equipment and added another layer to Benjamin's growing appreciation for Emma's dedication to her son. Over the following weeks, he began bringing additional tools for Noah to try. Watching the boy's confidence grow as he found ways to garden that worked with his particular needs rather than against them. "Mom, look," Noah called one Saturday morning, successfully using a modified trowel to transplant seedlings they had started indoors. "I can do it just as good as anyone else." The pride in Emma's voice was unmistakable. "You absolutely can, sweetheart." Benjamin felt a familiar tightness in his chest, remembering his own journey to reclaim competence after the accident. There was something powerful about watching Noah discover that different didn't mean less capable. and he found himself growing deeply invested in the boy's success. As the weeks progressed, their Saturday mornings extended naturally. After tending their garden plot, they would often walk through other sections, with Benjamin pointing out different plant varieties and Emma asking questions that revealed her growing interest in gardening as more than just a way to occupy Noah's time. "I never realized how much science was involved," she admitted. One morning, as they examined companion plantings in the herb section, the way certain plants help each other grow, or protect each other from pests. "Everything's connected," Benjamin replied. "That's what I love about garden design. You're not just placing plants randomly. You're creating relationships between them, an ecosystem," Emma said thoughtfully. "I teach about that in my classroom, but seeing it in action is completely different." Their conversations had begun to range far beyond gardening. Benjamin learned that Emma had always wanted to teach, but had put her career on hold when Noah was diagnosed with developmental delays as a toddler. She had spent years advocating for him in schools and therapy programs before finally returning to work when he started kindergarten. "It's been worth it," she said simply. "But sometimes I wonder who I might have been if I'd had different choices." "You'd have been someone else," Benjamin replied. "But you wouldn't have been the person who knew exactly how to help Noah flourish, or who could see potential in a community garden plot." Emma looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "You have a gift for seeing the positive in situations." "I learned it the hard way," Benjamin admitted. "After my accident, I spent months angry about everything I'd lost. It took me a long time to realize I was missing everything I still had." The honesty of the moment surprised them both. Benjamin rarely spoke about the accident or his emotional recovery to anyone, let alone someone he'd known for less than a month. But something about Emma's presence made him feel safe to be vulnerable. "What happened?" she asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." Benjamin found himself telling her about the drunk driver who had run a red light, the months of hospitalization and rehabilitation, the slow process of rebuilding a life that looked nothing like what he'd planned. Emma listened without offering empty reassurances or trying to find silver linings, just holding space for his experience. "I'm sorry you went through that," she said simply, "but I'm grateful it led you to garden design. You've changed how Noah sees himself, and that's no small thing." The depth of her gratitude caught Benjamin off guard. In the weeks since meeting Emma and Noah, he had felt more energized and purposeful than he had in years. Their enthusiasm for gardening had rekindled his own passion for the work. But more than that, their presence had filled a loneliness he had been carrying for so long, he'd almost forgotten it was there. One Saturday morning, Noah arrived with a school project about plant life cycles, asking if he could interview Benjamin as a garden expert. As Benjamin answered Noah's carefully prepared questions, Emma took photos of them working together, and he caught himself imagining being part of their small family in a more permanent way. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Since the accident, he had convinced himself that romance was too complicated, that his changed circumstances made him an unsuitable partner for someone dealing with her own challenges. But watching Emma's face light up when Noah successfully identified different leaf shapes, or listening to her laugh at his terrible gardening puns, Benjamin began to wonder if he had been limiting himself unnecessarily. "Mr. Benjamin," Noah said, as they finished the interview, "do you think next week we could work on that butterfly garden section you showed us?" "If it's okay with your mom," Benjamin replied, glancing at Emma. "Always," she said. But there was something in her tone that made Benjamin look at her more closely. After Noah wandered off to explore the berry bushes, Emma remained beside Benjamin as he cleaned his tools. The comfortable silence they had developed was tinged with something new, an awareness that hadn't been there before. "Benjamin," Emma said finally, "I want you to know how much these mornings mean to us." To me. The addition felt significant, and Benjamin found himself meeting her eyes directly. "They mean a lot to me too." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, and Benjamin felt the careful boundaries he had maintained beginning to shift. Emma Rivers had entered his life as Noah's mother, seeking gardening help, but she was becoming something else entirely. Someone who saw him completely and wasn't afraid of what she found. The butterflies they planned to attract to their garden, weren't the only things preparing to emerge from protective cocoons. In the safety of soil and growing things, something beautiful was taking root between them, patient and persistent as the perennial flowers they tended together. The autumn harvest festival at the community garden arrived with crisp air and the satisfaction of a season's work bearing fruit. Benjamin surveyed the bounty from Emma and Noah's plot with pride. Their carrots had grown straight and sweet, the climbing beans had exceeded expectations, and Noah's butterfly garden had attracted monarchs throughout September. "Mom, look how many carrots we got," Noah called, holding up a particularly impressive specimen. "Mr. Benjamin was right about the deep soil," Emma laughed, brushing dirt from Noah's cheek. "He usually is, isn't he?" Over the past 6 months, their Saturday mornings had become the anchor of Benjamin's week. What had begun as gardening instruction had evolved into something none of them had anticipated. Emma had proven to have natural gardening instincts, and her plot now rivaled some of the veteran gardeners. Noah had become the unofficial junior ambassador of adaptive gardening, eagerly showing other children the special tools that helped everyone participate. But it was the quiet moments between the three of them that had changed Benjamin's understanding of what family could look like. Emma bringing him coffee in a thermos during early morning garden prep. Noah insisting that Benjamin judge his attempts at identifying bird calls during their garden walks. The easy way they had begun including him in decisions about their plot and their lives. "Benjamin, there's something I want to talk to you about," Emma said, as they packed up their harvest. Noah was engaged in an animated discussion with another young gardener about composting techniques, giving them a moment of relative privacy. Benjamin felt his heart rate increase. Over the past few weeks, he had sensed a shift in Emma's demeanor, a hesitancy that hadn't been there before. He worried that she had begun to see their relationship as too complicated, that the realities of involving someone with a disability in her life had proven more challenging than she'd anticipated. "I've been offered a position as curriculum coordinator at the district level," Emma said carefully. "It's a significant promotion, more money, better benefits." "That's wonderful," Benjamin said, trying to keep his voice level despite the sinking feeling in his stomach. "You deserve recognition for your talents. The position is in Portland," Emma continued, watching his expression carefully. "We'd have to move next month." The words hit Benjamin like a physical blow. In 6 months, Emma and Noah had become integral to his vision of the future. He had been slowly building up the courage to express his growing feelings for Emma, to suggest that what they had built in the garden might extend beyond Saturday mornings. The news that they might disappear from his life entirely left him struggling to breathe. "That's a big opportunity," he managed. "Portland's a great city." "It is," Emma agreed. "But leaving would mean starting over again. New schools for Noah, new doctors, new everything." "Noah was resilient," Benjamin said, though the words felt like ash in his mouth. "He'll adapt." Emma was quiet for a long moment, watching her son demonstrate proper tool cleaning to his new friend. "What if we don't want to adapt to a life without you in it?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications that made Benjamin's heart race for entirely different reasons. He turned his wheelchair to face Emma directly, studying her expression for signs of the conversation he had been hoping for but hadn't dared initiate. "Emma," he started, then stopped, unsure how to put into words the depth of what he felt. "These 6 months have been the happiest Noah and I have been since his father left," Emma said quietly. "Not just because of the garden, though that's been wonderful. Because of you. Because of how you see us, how you believe in us. You've changed my life too," Benjamin replied, finding his voice. "Before I met you and Noah, I was just existing, going through the motions of building a career and maintaining independence, but not actually living. You two brought joy back into my world." "Then why does this conversation feel so hard?" Emma asked with a slight smile. "Because I'm in love with you," Benjamin said simply, the words emerging before he could second-guess them. "Because I've been in love with you for months, but I convinced myself that I had nothing to offer someone dealing with her own challenges. Because the thought of you moving across the country is breaking my heart." Emma's intake of breath was audible. "Benjamin, I know it's complicated," he continued, the floodgates now open. I know that being with someone like me comes with logistics and challenges you shouldn't have to navigate. I know that Noah deserves stability, not the uncertainty that comes with dating someone whose life looks different from what you probably imagined. Stop, Emma said firmly, moving closer to his chair. Just stop. For a moment, Benjamin feared he had ruined everything, that his honesty had been too much too fast. But then Emma knelt beside his wheelchair, bringing herself to his eye level, and took his hands in hers. You think being with you would be settling for less? She asked incredulously. Benjamin, you're the kindest, most thoughtful, most genuine man I've ever met. You've shown my son that different doesn't mean limited. You've reminded me what it feels like to be seen and appreciated for who I am, not just what I can provide for other people. Emma? Benjamin whispered, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. I turned down the Portland position, she said simply, 2 weeks ago, because what we've built here matters more than career advancement. Because Noah asks every day if you're going to be part of our family forever, and I realized I want the same thing. The admission left Benjamin speechless. He had spent so long assuming that his changed circumstances made him an unsuitable partner that he had never considered that Emma might be choosing him not despite his disability, but because of the complete person he was. Are you sure? He asked, needing to hear it again. I've never been more sure of anything, Emma replied, leaning forward to rest her forehead against his. I love your passion for creating beautiful spaces. I love how patient you are with Noah's questions. I love how you've taught both of us that adaptation isn't about limitation. It's about finding new ways to thrive. I love you too, Benjamin whispered, finally allowing himself to believe that this moment was real. Mom, Mr. Benjamin. Noah's voice interrupted them, and they separated, to see him running toward them with excitement. Mrs. Patterson says there's going to be a winter garden project. Can we sign up? Can we grow things that like cold weather? Emma and Benjamin looked at each other and burst into laughter at the perfect timing. What do you think? Emma asked Benjamin. Ready for year-round gardening with us? I can't think of anything I'd rather do, Benjamin replied, reaching out to ruffle Noah's hair. But first, I have a question for both of you. He maneuvered his chair back slightly and looked at them both seriously. How would you feel about making this official? Not just the gardening partnership, but the family part too. Noah's eyes widened. Like, you'd be my stepdad. If you'd like that, Benjamin said carefully. And if your mom agrees to marry me. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. Is that a proposal? It's absolutely a proposal, Benjamin confirmed. I know I should have a ring and a more romantic setting, but I can't wait another moment to ask you to build a life with me. Both of you, yes. Noah shouted before Emma could respond. Yes, yes, yes. Can we have a garden wedding? Can we grow our own flowers for it? Emma was laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes to the proposal, and yes to the garden wedding, and yes to growing our own flowers. Benjamin felt a joy so complete it was almost overwhelming. 6 months ago, he had been tending his garden alone, convinced that solitude was the price of independence. Now, surrounded by the abundance of their shared harvest and the promise of a future planted together, he understood that the most beautiful things in life grew not in isolation, but in connection. So, he said, pulling both Emma and Noah into the best group hug his seated position would allow. When do we start planning this garden wedding? Right now, Noah declared. I already know what flowers we should plant for next spring. As the three of them began animatedly discussing seasonal blooming schedules and ceremony logistics, Benjamin realized that his grandmother had been right all along. Gardens were where magic happened, where tiny seeds of possibility grew into something beautiful and sustaining through patience, care, and love. The wheelchair that had once symbolized limitation had become simply another tool in his life, no more defining than his gardening gloves or design software. What mattered was not the circumstances that had brought them together, but the choice they made each day to tend the love growing between them with the same dedication they brought to their plants. In the golden light of the Harvest Festival, surrounded by the community that had witnessed their love story unfold among the raised beds and meandering paths, Benjamin Torres had never felt more complete. The garden had taught him that the most resilient plants often grew from the most unexpected places, putting down roots deep enough to weather any storm. And he was ready to spend the rest of his life growing something beautiful with Emma and Noah by his side.